I'm all about playbooks and extremely detailed. Here's what goes out when, here's the template to use, here's exactly what to personalize. The document you need is right here to attach.
Two of you can handle so many customers, and that's because of the level of documentation and structures that you have built.
The benefits have been great. We've seen more consistency with how we're dealing with clients and making sure that what we're doing is a repeatable process.
Hello and welcome to the Scale Tail podcast. I'm your host, Mausmi Ambastha, and in this episode, we are going to dive into a very interesting topic. We will discuss the importance of documentation and its profound impact on customer success operations. Our special guest today will share her personal stories, insights, and motivations behind her unwavering dedication to capturing and organizing knowledge. Now, let me introduce you to Rachel Baker. Rachel is a senior customer success manager at Pittsburgh-based software company Rimsys. She leverages over 8 years of experience in strategic planning and action to drive business success, along with prior marketing background in higher education and nonprofit sectors. With expertise in customer success, marketing enablement, and training, Rachel excels at streamlining processes, training growing teams, and delivering results. Thank you very much, Rachel, for coming here today.
Mausmi, thank you so much for having me on the podcast. I'm really thrilled to be doing this with you.
I'm glad. Thank you, Rachel. And the first thing I want to ask before we dive into our topic, how did you land up in customer success? A little bit about your journey. It's always very exciting how people end up doing customer success.
It really is. And I think like so many other customer success professionals, I sort of fell into it and really found a good fit. I had several years of experience in marketing. I'd worked for nonprofits. I'd worked in higher education doing communications. And I took a role at a software company. They weren't calling it customer success at the time. They were an established company. They had a team who was doing onboarding. And once I got in there, I started seeing, well, we're not really tracking customer KPIs. We're not helping clients figure out what their goals are with this software. And so, knowing what I wanted out of my, my clients, I started helping to build a program that ultimately became customer success under a different name. And so used that experience and have since moved into a role at a startup company that I was essentially the first customer success hire. And so really helped to build the department for where we are now as a startup. So it's been a really exciting journey, and I love customer success.
You've been the foundation stone in terms of building an entire department division in an early company. That must have been very exciting.
It is. It's been so exciting. I love taking what is unformed and putting some parameters around it. My colleagues will tell you I'm so process oriented. We've got to document it. We've got to get a process down and make sure that that's shared out amongst, not just our department, but sales, other departments too, so that we've got that in place.
Last time we had a chat, Rachel, and what I understood from our discussion was you are a person who's obsessed with documentation. And that is something very important for customer success. But I really want to understand from your point of view, why are you so obsessed with documentation and why do you think it's so important?
I love that question. And I would say it's really true. Documentation is so critical for so many areas. So you have customers, making sure that customers are able to get where they want to go. They're not going to do that if it's just the Wild West of, okay, here's the software, have fun. You need to be able to help clients visualize, verbalize their goals, their objectives, and then put together a plan for helping them get there. And that requires documentation, not only for clients to be able to see that progress, but also internally so that you have consistency among what you're doing from client to client. when one client is successful, you want to make sure that those lessons are being reviewed or being shared, that you're documenting what works for them and what you've done internally to help enable them to get there. So documentation is just critical for the customer facing side of things, but also then internally. And I'm seeing, especially at a startup, that so much knowledge lives in the head of these
Yes.
really brilliant technical thinkers. And so getting that knowledge out of their heads and into a document where it can be referenced across the team, because as the company grows, we're not going to be able to turn to the CTO to, address a need for 20 different clients all at the same time. And so having documentation of the technical side, as well as what we on the customer success side are doing, and then also, other departments, the implementation team, the sales team, understanding what product is doing. And so that's really an exciting challenge at a startup, is figuring out how to document and then centralize that data so that it's visible for anyone in the company who needs it.
I am guilty of some of it. In terms, if my team was hearing this, they would say, "Touche, you need to follow us what you're talking about." Early days in a startup, there's so many things that are so important and urgent, right? And people are most of the time in early days trying to, solve product problems and customer issues and things like that. Documentation sometimes sort of takes a backseat.
Oh, absolutely.
Which is not a good thing, because if you want to scale, that's not a good idea at all. But when you joined this company, at early days as a first CS person, and you started pushing that, guys, we need documentation. Everything, but it's in your head. It doesn't matter. We need it on paper. How hard was it to, get this entire culture change? It's actually a culture change, right? To make people don't solve it just, post solving the problem, write it down as well as to how to solve it the next time, right? So how did you get that culture change into a chaotic organization? Startups are chaotic, right?
Sure. Yeah. Honestly, it's still a work in progress. As our product grows so rapidly and the direction that we want to go grows, that knowledge changes sometimes day to day or more frequently. And so making sure too, a challenge, not just for startups, that documentation you already have stays up to date and is maintained on a regular basis, is a challenge for sure. But in terms of getting it there, a lot of it is just being willing to be one of the folks holding other teammates accountable. My colleague on my team and I sometimes joke that, we feel like we're annoying them for this, getting this process down, but it really is so critical. And the other teammates, the folks that have these processes that are needing to be documented or in process being documented, it's not a power struggle. They understand the importance of it. The challenge is just there's so little time for everything that needs to be done. And what's going to be priority? Are you going to prioritize documenting your steps? Or are you going to prioritize getting this thing out the door for the customer? And so, all software companies, all good software companies are customer focused first, right? So you want to get it out the door. So there has to be a little bit of give and take on when you set aside that time for documentation and treating it sacred. At my current company, we now have a company-wide day of no internal recurring meetings so that we can focus on internal tasks such as documentation, such as being able to walk through and make sure we've got the term our company uses has our ducks in a row. And so that, I think, can be really valuable for companies that are looking to expand, make it part of their company culture to say, okay, we're going to dedicate and commit to giving our employees time to work through these types of things. Beyond that, having an owner who maintains that documentation And, for a startup, that can kind of shift around a little bit, right? Different people who have the time available are going to be responsible for it. Then their priorities shift. So you have to make sure that doesn't get dropped. Someone else is maintaining that too.
It's always a matter of priority. Let me tell you a little bit about what we did. So this is my second startup. In the first startup, we just started building the product, and the documentation was happening at the time of building the product. So the product build took much longer because things were changing and the development was happening. Now, in the second startup here, what we did was, even before the first line of code was written, we spent like months documenting like 900 pages of what the product is going to do, like everything. So the development process was much faster. But that was in the beginning. Now it's on a day-to-day basis. We try to put those documentation in, but as you say, it's a work in progress. Processes keep changing, systems keep changing, and it's really hard. But I really like the idea that you've put together, maybe once a week, sort of just fix a day. This is the day, everybody get up to date in your documentation. Otherwise it would be crazy and impossible to scale, right? You cannot, the passing of the knowledge will be actually more time taking than putting the document together. So that's a great thing, I'm going to use that phrase, put your ducks in a row. Day to put your ducks in a row. That's a good one. But I love the way, the entire organization and as a culture, you have set this process that once a week, everybody has been given like dedicated window to focus on the job of putting documentation in, so that everybody knows that this is very important and has a certain level of priority within the business, apart from everything else and all the fires that are burning that needs to be put down.
Right, exactly.
Right now, with this culture change and the way things are, it's amazing the way you have set it up. What are the activities that you do in terms of putting those documentations in? Like, what does the team do? Are they using some tools? Are they using a proper team member whose job is to sort of document or audit or update? Like, how is it structured?
Sure. Yeah, at this stage, we're at my current company, we're still kind of figuring it out as we go along. So we have a few different places where that information lives. We've got, on the customer success side, we have a customer success software that we use to maintain that data, and my team and I live in there. Other teams have other purpose-built software that they're using. And as a company, we have a shared SharePoint, shared Teams space, some other software. So really one of the things that we've found as a company is that all of these different purpose-built softwares are great for the day-to-day of doing the things, but we're looking at ways to centralize some of that documentation a little bit further, so that I don't have to figure out, okay, I need to know what's coming out in the next release, and I need that from the product team. Do I go to this area, or even a third area to try and piece it all together? So in terms of what that's looking like today, the important thing is getting it written wherever that lives. I think a phase 2 step of this is going to be, then once we've got that documentation in place, figuring out, as I said, how to centralize it, not let it be siloed from team to team. And at this stage, it's really on the individuals to maintain their own data. That's being driven by the managers and the top down, but it is, I think, going to be a growing priority. We had a big push at one point in time to get some of that initial data down, and then the client needs getting a major release out to the clients has become the focus. And so as we approach the tail end of that stage, getting into how we can manage that again going forward. So it's very exciting. I don't want to give the impression that it's entirely chaos. I think it's a good time to be able to contribute to that shared knowledge across the team. The company culture, we're very open and very structured, or very open to customer feedback about how can we be doing this better, whatever it is. And so there's a lot of opportunity for us as employees to shape how we do that and what that's going to look like in the future. So that's pretty valuable.
I also know that you work in a very niche technical area, right? It's not something which somebody who joins the company can understand like this. So that could be something I think is a very valuable thing for somebody who's joining as a CS to, get up to date with that basic technical requirement that is like ABC for working in the company that you're working right now. So has that helped in terms of new joinees in the organization to sort of get them up and running in terms of updating them? So is there a onboarding plan like for joinees, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're 100% correct. My company is in the medtech software industry. We build software to help medtech companies keep track of regulatory information. And there's so much paperwork, there's so much documentation. So as a company, our goal is to similarly be helping our clients streamline that. And so in medtech, there are so many acronyms, there are so many government regulatory bodies to keep track of, various standards, just all kinds of information that can be challenging for someone who doesn't have experience in that industry to grasp and understand, along with, as a new employee, learning the software and learning the company structure and who to go to for what, right? So having that documentation is critical. And we do have an HR department that has, over time, put together a pretty solid employee onboarding program as well. And so, I was one of the very early hires in the company. And so I've really seen that develop as we've grown our teams. And that's been great.
See, customer success has to talk to their customers, and those customers in your space specifically would be much more savvy and intelligent and aware of their requirements and these acronyms and industry parameters.
Yes.
And I'm still thinking that as a new customer success person, let's say I join your company, I would be totally blank, and I need to first even learn the language of what my customer is talking about to understand what they are asking for, or if they are having a problem in an X or Y section. What are they talking? What is their problem? It's a lot. It's a really very niche area to understand not only the software, but also the industry and vertical in general. Right?
Exactly.
That must have been a complete... You do have a very strong science background, right, Rachel, when we were discussing? Like you were able to understand all of these things much faster.
My undergrad experience, I was a science major, although that was not the direction that my career had taken. It does feel like a little bit of a return to my roots to be in, at a company that's sort of steeped in some of that industry. That being said, when I started, med tech and regulatory affairs was not an area I had background in. And so as basic as a glossary for all of the acronyms, some of the just figuring out who to follow on social media that educates people, what are the blogs, what are the journals that I can be following to really understand the industry beyond, okay, here's the need our clients have and how we fix it, but understanding how that fits into the bigger picture. So that those basic pieces of sort of building blocks of documentation are so critical.
So as you grow your team in your company and you get new customer success people, like, do you think that you are able to find somebody who's already sort of proficient in these things, or you're always hiring somebody who just knows customer success and not vertical so much? Like, how are you putting this together and what are you seeing in the market?
Yeah, what we're seeing in the customer success hires that we've done are actually my team is myself and one other customer success manager, both senior managers, and we had prior experience working together. And so I knew when she came on board that this was someone who had a similar understanding of customer success and what it looks like to be successful in that space. And so that was really helpful. And as we do look to build our customer success team, those are skills that can be taught. We want someone who can understand the need for it, and we can train them up to be where we are. Now, in terms of at my company, who I'm working with here, she also has had some prior experience in the industry. So for her, she was
good.
she was
That's
great.
good.
She jumped on in both feet. At prior companies that I've worked at in customer success, we as a team were all training and learning together. And so that's great when you have more than one person to start with, when you've got a pool of folks who can all be learning the same skills and the same background at the same time, to be sharing ideas with one another. And if a company is willing to help foster that culture, that really helps it settle in so much further. So I've been involved in training folks in customer success, and there are some really good resources out there.
Yes.
It's just making sure that folks know where to look, and really that drive to learn more,
yes,
I think is an important skill. I see a lot of the people I follow on LinkedIn are saying, oh, I want to transition to customer success from some other industry. And that's great. Customer success is, as long as you're someone who's willing to, who's interested in learning, continual learning and education, that's going to get you really far in customer success. And I think you'll do well.
And I think curiosity is the key ingredient in a customer success person. If you're curious, you will learn all of it.
Absolutely.
So, coming back to, we've got a little segue, but coming back to our topic of documentation. So, to what extent have you gone through the document? So I understand that vertical specific acronyms that are obviously documented, a lot of things that people talk about in terms of vertical specific information, that is something that is definitely documented. Now, in terms of processes and how you manage process within, so have you documented, like, are all the processes documented to the extent, like, what email will you send, or your presentation, like, to what extent does that document, like, how deep does it go, is all I want to know.
Yeah. I do so well with a thoroughly, deeply documented process. And so my vision for where I'd like to see and contribute is getting to that point where, in the company that I'm at now. And so we have, on the customer success side, some processes that we're currently documenting about, okay, here's what we do. My prior experience, I worked for a marketing enablement software company. And so I'm all about playbooks and extremely detailed. Here's what goes out when, here's the template to use, here's exactly what to personalize. The document you need is right here to attach. And so getting those processes in place, that's something that I am working on presently in terms of playbooks. But we do have a lot of that documentation already written, and we have sort of a pool where we can go in and grab what we need for that.
Okay, which means that somebody who's working on a day-to-day basis, they have everything they need in terms of what, if they're talking to a customer, if you're doing XYZ activities, everything is right there, to the extent of what to use, what to put, just customize these 3 areas and go ahead. Which means you have, to a large extent, de-skilled the process. Is that right?
Yeah. We've figured out what we need, where the gaps are, and who's the person that's going to fill in that gap. Well, it's going to be myself, it's going to be my colleague, just making the time for that as well. So
probably that's why, as you said, 2 of you can handle so many customers, and that's because of the level of documentation and structures that you have built. Because another company like this with such complicated processes, just 2 CS people, that is a credit. And that only happens because you have these documentation and structures and systems in place, where you're not wasting time doing that, but you're actually doing your job on a day-to-day basis. Am I understanding it right, Rachel?
Yep, that's exactly right. So, we're scaling up as quickly as the company is growing with a small team of customer success folks.
Yeah.
And so having that is going to be even more valuable as we continue to grow. Things are never going to slow down at a startup, right?
No, of course,
It's just a matter of how well can you manage the chaos.
So if you can share, how many clients or customers or users do you handle? Two of you.
Yeah, we're sharing a load of between 30 and 40 clients right now, which is quite a bit for two CSMs.
Yes.
But at a startup, as you said, having the documentation has been invaluable. And when I started at this company, we didn't, we didn't have a customer success team really fleshed out at that time. And so the company had been focused on getting clients through implementation. Once they hit go live, then, that was kind of where it left off. And so one of the first things that I did was begin reaching out to those clients to establish those longer term relationships, and just having some feedback discussions with them. And then as they got comfortable with who I was and why I was reaching out, then began to set up quarterly business reviews with folks, working in some additional touch points, and really making sure that they are learning about the value of the software beyond just an infrequent touch point or two. And so,
and also in your space, regulations keep changing. Like you are looking at worldwide regulations, they keep changing often, which means they keep getting added and the product keeps changing with those. So that is also something that comes on your table where you have to, keep updating your customers of what's happening, what's changing. That is a lot of work on the table anyway.
It is.
Let me just tell my listeners, right? 30, 40 customers, these are large medtech companies, and there is a lot to deal with. For a B2C company, 40 is very small, but the kind of business that Rimsys does, 40 customers is a lot of work.
Yes, it is. And, our implementation team is fantastic at working with clients in those initial onboarding stages. And the CSM, we're there to support the team. The analogy that I love to use with clients is that we're all on a road trip together. We're on a journey to get you to your end goal with the software. And, we talk about what those goals are. And initially, when clients are being onboarded, it's not customer success driving the bus. Our implementation team is driving. Customer success is, maybe in the passenger seat, helping to look at the map, making sure the temperature is good, making sure that the music is keeping the vibe up, right? And so also where the customer success team sort of spells the driver, right, comes in is clients have gotten through implementation, they're in go live. Now we want to talk about adoption. And so the customer success manager takes over in the driver's seat. There's a little bit of a rear view mirror action where you're looking back and saying, okay, let's see what lessons we can learn from this implementation with the customer and internally. But we're going to focus on how do we drive forward, and how do we, what's the next goal we want to set the compass for. And so it's so critical. You've got when you have such a great need, to have a great team. And we really do see how hard our implementation team works with customers that are so complex, as you pointed out.
And it seems that two of you and documentation is also part of your team, like the way you have documented your processes and structures, and of course you keep evolving as you get along, right? And that's something that I really want to put a pin on, so that we don't miss out. That because of the process and documentation that Rachel, you've put together in your business, two of you are handling 40 customers with very complex processes all the way through adoption. So it's just implementation that is being taken care of. But post implementation, adoption is also a reasonably long journey, constantly setting up goals, putting new things in. So that entire journey that you've been able to do smoothly with just two people. And that's the huge benefit that comes with putting documentation on priority within a business. And I get why you are obsessed with documentation. I understand now. Have you seen any additional benefit within your organization with the way you have, helping your business adopt this new way of working? Like, have you seen something that people have noticed within the business, things changing, or other people also realizing, okay, this is something very interesting, we need to also get into this bandwagon?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, the benefits have been great. We've seen more consistency with how we're dealing with clients and making sure that what we're doing is a repeatable process with folks. And so that takes dedication from not just customer success, but other teams as well, to be updating and maintaining their processes, to be referring back to the processes that we've created and where they overlap. And so as we've been doing this, it's been really great to see teammates come, start knowing where to look for information and being able to pull some of that information for themselves, that can help them then with their documentation. So, where we have a really good sales to implementation team handoff process that the company's been doing for quite a while. We've got a solid implementation team to customer success handoff that's in place now as well. And we're thinking about how do we incorporate this with other teams also. So some things that are internal / customer facing, but also just internal to internal as well. So the benefits are great because we're able to reduce time spent on things that now have a repeatable process. Because there's documentation, team members know what to be doing and when, and can do that more efficiently, more effectively, without having to wait for, the CTO or the head of one of the departments to weigh in on a particular piece. So it's been really valuable.
So last question, when you started, how long did it take? I know you just said it's still work in progress, but how long did it take for you to, start documentation? Because most of the time what happens is people sort of feel lost. Like, where do I start documenting? Like, what do I start writing first? And how do I go about it?
So in terms of getting started, when I first joined the startup, I said, it feels like the Wild West. There's no structure. Like, as a customer success, as at that stage, the primary customer success person, it's like, I don't really have a whole lot of external direction about where to take this. And so I just started creating some order out of the chaos myself over, the few months of learning the software and getting a feel for the company cultures and expectations, began to document what I wanted to see happening. And so over the course of several months, that grew from, okay, let's establish quarterly touch points and relationship building with clients, to, great, we've now got clients into a cadence with those meetings. Now let's take a look at what else we need to be doing. Where can we help empower our other internal teams to be doing their job more efficiently? What do they need that we can help provide a helping hand on? And documenting the processes from a customer success perspective that can be shared with other teams to help them think through theirs. And so I've been with this company for a little over 2 years now, and we really do have some really smooth processes in place around some of those parts. And as you said, Mausmi, just being able to understand where we want it to continue going and communicate that across the company is valuable.
Wonderful, Rachel. Thank you. Thank you very much. I think this was an extremely valuable discussion. I know it seems very small when you talk about documentation, but it's a massive task to do. It's a massive task once you start actually sit down and work on it. It's daunting and it's never ending. It's always, you need to continue because your process is improving. The document needs to constantly, catch up. And the sooner and faster it catches up, the better it is for the organization. And that's something that's a very, very valuable. And I think it's one of the basis of customer success. Every good CS person should be obsessed like yourself to, document things to get their customer success up and running. It's individual heroics doesn't really, create a sustainable business. Right? It needs, your heroics need to be in a process.
Yes.
That's what my team members tell me. I need to get back to documentation much better than whatever I'm doing. Thank you very much for the discussion. I really, really enjoyed this, Rachel.
I did too. Thank you so much for having me today.
I'm sure the listeners were also able to absorb from what you had to share. And listeners, if you'd like to connect to Rachel, her LinkedIn account is shared in the description. Feel free to drop her a message. And if you found this podcast valuable, we would greatly appreciate your support. Please subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with fellow CS professionals who can benefit from this content. And let's all get on documentation. Stay tuned for next episode. Take care, everyone. Thanks, Rachel.
Thank you.